If or when we have been graced by God to have it revealed to us that love has been betrayed, and when in God's mercy He knows a man is made fit to receive it, there is an accompanying revelation of His part in it. And this does something. Because the man finds, from that moment on, an irrefutable truth that he knows, as perhaps he's not known anything other, that he didn't recognize love when it came to him. And not only did he not recognize it, he despised it. He was a betrayer of it. This does something to his understanding, right down to and no less than to the depths of what it means to know anything, particularly love. This thing that all men are convinced they know, because all men have affections, and the very deepest of that affection they label love. And so they think, as I have thought, and to whatever measure my thinking yet needs to be clarified, unfogged, delivered by a mind in renewal, he is quite sure he knows what love is. It is that affection he identifies as deepest to himself. And when he finds out it is not that at all, not at all, that he learns love is an absolute, love is a reality, love is not a comparative thing. The thing I like the most is not love. The thing I desire the most is not love. The thing I want the most, or to achieve the most, or to whatever extent, is not love. The thing I like to eat the most is not love at all. And so entering into this place of being frankly confronted with not knowing anything of any eternal establishment, the man must come to rely on the Lord as the only true thing. It may not seem the pleasant way that a man find out that his greatest affection was working the greatest ill, that his greatest affections meant nothing, that his greatest affections led him to betraying the very thing he thought he was serving, love, and in many cases God for the religious, just as Jesus said. They will do all sorts of things to you saying that this is God's will. This is the work of God we're doing. And so this matter of not having to have, everything being turned upside down. Everything having to be, if I can use those words, having to be, as though it sounds like something that, it's just God is not a man, as we know man. And we don't even know what man is unless God reveals to us what man is. And so there is this overturning, there is this abandonment by the grace of God, and only by the grace of God, and by the tutelage of the Lord Jesus Christ, through many chastenings, many disciplines, even in what may result in our loud cries and tears, to the establishment of what is true, by the uprooting in us all the falsehoods we've embraced as truth. That we know what love is. I know what a person is. I know what it means to be a man. I know what it means to be awake. I know what it means to be spiritual. The spiritual man might say. Oh, bless the Lord. This thing, we could call it, I think the Lord does call it the self, that has to be dealt with always, daily. Or the ego, however I suppose one cares to view it. More psychological terms, the ego, but the self is just as psychic or psyche involved. It's not like using certain words puts it off limits because it sounds too much like psychology and not spiritual enough. So the ego, the self, always being dealt with, and rightly, and thanks be to God, rightly, by the cross of the Lord Jesus Christ. That puts to death all things carnal and natural, and the hostility. It identifies, calls it out, nails it up to things spiritual. And when Paul wrote, if while seeking to be justified by Christ we find ourselves sinners, is Christ therefore the minister of sin? God forbid! But as we go along, we sure find out, there's a lot more mud in there than I first knew. And it wouldn't be unusual, and Paul answered it, for a man to think, is it the following of Christ that's causing this? No, that's not causing the mud, it's just exposing it. Don't confuse. Don't confuse God's desire for you to confront what needs to be confronted, dealt with in the cross and by the cross, with God creating it in you. Now, we did that. We masked all these things and dressed them up to not look as what they were. To stink of self. And so Jesus, he's pretty severe about it. About hating mother and father, brothers, sisters, wives, children. Yeah. And we may think that that's an emotional repugnance that he's calling for, but it's not. It's an influence to be out from under. That we only be under one influence, that we are under one influence, and to be consistent. honest, truthful, if that's what we confess, that Jesus is Lord, that he is the only one that holds sway over our soul. And so this deliverance, as Paul came to understand it, absolutely necessary. Because the only way of being free from the responsibility for sin is to also likewise be made free from thinking we can do anything good or claim it. See, Paul understood. This thing of self has to be dealt with so thoroughly because it's quite twofold. It's not only that the man prefers to think well of himself, which is quite normal, natural, carnal, and our inclination first. But that in that, he also holds basis for judging others, you see. If he can take credit for being good, he can ascribe judgment and condemnation for those he views as bad. And he loves that just as much as he loves thinking well of himself. Because he has to have somebody to think he's better than. And so in his piety, he says, it is not God I think I am better than. But in his heart, he says, I know I am better than that man. Because he's still taking credit. Paul understood to be free of that. To be free of those laws and their laws in operation. To be free of that law of sin and death. To be free of that would put us under condemnation. The man has to relinquish holds of doing anything good so that he doesn't also take to himself responsibility for all his acts, which are evil. It's the way out. It's the escape. So the moment we set our hand to doing what we think is good, even in the consciousness of it, I'm doing a good thing, by whatever metric we use. For some, apart from the Lord, it may be giving their bodies to be burned, I don't know. Giving their fortunes to the poor, I don't know. Laboring forever as a missionary, not a missionary, a doctor in the Congo. That consciousness of doing a good thing is the same thing that will, when refreshed, bring the condemnation for all the evil that has been done. Not unconsciously either. Just hidden away. So it's always best to plead ignorance, as Paul did. What he did, and he said when he persecuted the church of God, he did in ignorance. He saw, best plea to have. God allows for it, but you got to own it. You got to be as ignorant of your having doing evil as you are of discerning good from evil. It has to be shown. And it is only by much exercise we come to discern good from evil. But that still does not give us the right to judge in the sense of any condemnation. Any condemnation. We have to come to that place of being neutral about God's judgments. What we approve, what we lend our approval to, what we lend our esteem to, we think is so much because we're thinking like the natural man. This is the most I have to give. My esteem. We find out. And then we begin to find out what love is. Perhaps. As I've said many times and will continue to remind any who may think I'm speaking from anything other than what I'm speaking as one who has known nothing of love, betrayed it on multiple occasions, had it shown to me, treated it spitefully, used it. And that creates in the man, by the way, once he sees that, and he begins to understand a little bit about love, has a grievous hurt to him. And his soul wants to do something about it. His soul now wants to make it right. His soul now wants to undo or do whatever can undo the grievous thing that was done. And he finds out he's forgiven, and there's nothing he can do. Not a thing he can do to undo it. It is a fait accompli. He has seen, he has betrayed love. And there's nothing he can do to go back. Nothing he can do to undo it. Nothing he can present that shows now he's in that place where understanding all that love is, he can make it right. And I know that sounds peculiar. It sounds as though I'm saying we're not to love. It's not that at all. It's finding out what love is. It is not a payback. And boy, do we sometimes feel indebted. But who's doing that? Why? That would be the most dread burden to bear. To be indebted. Indebted to God for what he did to his Son for us. Where he says the debt is forgiven. We still try to pay it. I'm not going to lie to you, brothers and sisters. That would be foolish. That would be stupid. That would probably have very bad consequences if I pretended I never try to pay back. I never try the quid pro quo deal with God. But to see it, the debt is forgiven. That even, and God knows how this works, that even works deeper. But look what I did to you. And he says, yeah, I know, but you're forgiven. Yeah, I know I was dead. I know. Well, you know, what can I do for you? Believe me. Or not. See, that's another thing I found out after years and years and years. And it's just beginning to find out. I was so in tune with being such a masquerader and a fake. And I'm not saying I've come very far, God knows. But I know how, in my mind and heart and practice, and it's only been through a certain relationship I've really come to understand something about it. And it's in the Lord, of course. But the response that seems so automatic to, I love you, is almost called forth to be, I love you too. But you find out in the Lord, there's nothing that matches for his joy or yours if it is to be said, I love you. Upon hearing the other responds with, I believe you. I believe you.